Order 7 p.m. Tuesday, November 16th. Council Chambers, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut. Roll call, please. Ms. Milton. Here.
Present.
Here. Mr. Bonner. Here. Mr. Delliver.
Here.
And Mr. Wolf.
Here.
We have quorum present.
Thank you, Ms. Milton. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome, everyone, and welcome to our two council members who are on the TV screen. We're appreciative that you're both able to make it via telecom tonight. We're going to start with public communications. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. If there are any members of the public that would like to address any issue with the town council, please come up, give us your name and address for the record. Mr. McKinney?
My name is James McKinney, 272 Beacon Hill Drive, Cheshire. And I hope you're in receipt of correspondence that I have been trying to get the council to acknowledge over the past, since March. We have vacancies on the Public Building Commission. We need them filled. We need them filled yesterday. We've had to juggle the schedules around vacation times. By our bylaws, we need 5 affirmative votes. Everybody could be in agreement if we have 4, but we can't pay a bill. We can't pass an action. And I know I've spoken to Arnett, I've spoken to a number of people, and I just want to express the urgency of the need for filling those 2 vacancies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Any other members of the public wish to speak to the council regarding any matter? Please come up, give us your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to Public Safety Awards. Chief Drive? Oh, excuse me. Yes, please come on up.
A little nervous. I haven't done this before. Is this the appropriate time to speak about the hazard mitigation plan? If I have a comment regarding it?
You can certainly do so now, a public comment, or I would give you an opportunity when that item comes up on the agenda later. It's really your choice.
That might be more appropriate since everything would be in proper time.
Your choice.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
wait. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other public comment from members of the audience? Seeing none, I'll move on to Public Safety Awards. Chief Drive?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we get started, just as a personal comment, I realize that this is your last official meeting. I would like to thank you for the support that you've shown to the Cheshire Police Department and the men and women of the organization over the course of your tenure here. Certainly, I don't think there's anybody in this room who can say that we have lacked for equipment, support, staffing, contract, just about everything that we've come through. You've always been supportive, along with the rest of the council, of Cheshire's public safety departments, the fire department, and the police department. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you over the last several terms of your tenure on the council. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Drive. Appreciate the comments.
So I have an awards to give out today that are long overdue. But they're from an incident that happened back in 2019. The reason that I've waited this long is I think that the incident is certainly worthy of recognition here in front of the members of the council, in front of the public, for a horrific incident that happened in town back on September 11th of 2019. I know that the past 18 months have been difficult for everybody with the pandemic and these Zoom meetings. As I mentioned before, I certainly think that the actions of the men and women of the police department and other town employees that we're going to recognize tonight were certainly merited an in-person ceremony, as opposed to trying to do it over Zoom or, God forbid, in the garage at the police department so we could maintain social distancing. This was a horrific incident. It did happen here in town. The men and women of the organization acted courageously and with just a degree of professionalism that speaks volumes to them as police officers and to the town as a whole. So again, I want to just make that clear. The fact that it's 2 years after the incident is an intentional thing so that we can recognize them in this appropriate forum. So there are a number of officers and civilians getting awards tonight. I'm not going to read them all. The incident speaks for itself. I'm going to focus on just reading the one narrative here. So on Wednesday, September 11th, 2019, the Cheshire Police Department received a 911 call from a cellular phone. Dispatchers Ron Henry and Stephanie Masella were on duty in the dispatch center at police headquarters. The dispatchers were able to hear the voice of a child, but were unable to get any additional information. Working together using technology available to them, the dispatchers were able to determine that the call originated in the area of a residence on Mountain Road. Officers were promptly dispatched while the dispatchers continued to seek additional information. Officer Michael Aquilino, Officer Robert Regan, and Sergeant Jeff Falk responded to the residence. Upon arriving, Officer Aquilino checked the exterior of the building before knocking at the door and announcing himself. After hearing moaning, Aquilino was able to look through a window and see injured persons inside on the floor. As he was attempting to force entry, the door was opened by a man who was also injured. At this time, Sergeant Falk arrived at the scene, followed immediately by Officer Regan. The officers were faced with a horrific scene and a critically injured female victim. The officers worked together to clear and secure the residence, as it was unclear at the time if there were additional victims or suspects in the house. Officer Aquilino climbed the stairs to the second floor, where he came upon 2 children in a bedroom. Aquilino transitioned from suspect search to caring and empathetic first responder. He spoke calmly to the older child, making sure that they were okay before resuming the search of the house. Once the house was secured, Officers Aquilino and Regan and Sergeant Falk began to triage the victims and provided first aid. Officer Matt Severo and Sergeant Vincent Belcastro arrived at the scene and rendered further assistance as the incident transitioned from first response to investigation. As Officer Regan was tending to the female victim, she told him that the injured male, her husband, had in fact stabbed her after an argument. As it turned out, this was her dying declaration, as she died from her injuries at the hospital without regaining consciousness. Ultimately, the male suspect was charged with murder and is in custody awaiting trial. So that was a domestic violence incident that happened, again, September 11th of 2019. And in addition to the officers mentioned here, well, I'll tell you about everybody. So tonight we're going to honor Officer Robert Regan with a Distinguished Service Medal. We're going to have Meritorious Service Awards for Sergeant Jeff Falk and Officer Mike Aquilino, a Chief Citation for Officer Carmine Calo, Distinguished Service Awards for Michelle Picarillo and Stephanie Masella, and a letter of commendation for Officer Matt Severo. Also be another letter of commendation for Sergeant Belcastro, who could not be here tonight. In addition, one of the other dispatchers who was working, Ron Henry, has since relocated to a different part of the country and couldn't be here with us tonight. Stephanie Masella, who at the time was a dispatcher with us, is here tonight, as you'll notice when she comes up to accept her award. She's now a police officer in Meriden. And Michelle Picarillo, who responded to our calls for help immediately after we secured the scene, took custody of the 2 children, including an infant who was present in the house when this happened, and the young son who witnessed the incident of his mother being killed and had the wherewithal to dial 911. It was a total team effort on behalf of everybody who was on duty that night and responded afterwards. Again, a truly horrific homicide scene with children present. Everybody worked together to get the children out of there, locate family members to come and get them. Officer Regan had the wherewithal to question this woman. It was all captured on his video, his body-worn camera. Which I'm told played a significant role in the strength of our case. She never regained consciousness. Officer Aquilino, who was searching the residence for suspects and turns a corner and comes across a young child and an infant in a bedroom, and like that transitions from, there might be still somebody with ill intent in the house to, "Are you okay?" Officer Kalo, who came on the scene shortly afterwards and stayed with the children till Michelle got there, and then we're able to get them out of there without, shielding them as much as possible from this horrific scene, and their mother, who was still, who had been transported and was critically injured. So just an all-around fantastic job by the men and women of the organization. I think a testament to what happens in police work, and the fact that people think, "Oh, well, you're a cop in Cheshire. What really happens there?" And you know what? It doesn't take much for something like this. It can happen anywhere, and sometimes it does. And I think the people of this town should be absolutely just very excited about the professionalism that their police department is provides on a routine basis, and the fact that they can rise to an occasion like this speaks volumes for them as police professionals. So I will call them up one at a time and present them with their awards. So again, Officer Robert Regan receiving a Distinguished Service Medal. Rob. Officer Michael Aquilino receiving a Meritorious Service Award. Sergeant Jeff Falk also receiving a Meritorious Service Award. Officer Matt Severo receiving a letter of commendation. Officer Stephanie Masella from the Meriden Police Department, who again was a dispatcher with us, receiving a Distinguished Service Award. And our very own Michelle Piccirillo receiving a Distinguished Service Award. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Chief, thank you so much for taking the time to recognize these heroic events that occurred that night. I unfortunately witnessed from afar pieces of that event that night. I live very close to that residence, and my sister lives even closer. And when all of the commotion started, I walked down just to kind of see what was going on, and quickly understood the severity of what was happening and the professionalism of everyone in our community here, the police officers, certainly Michelle and her staff who responded, quickly did everything they needed to do to protect the scene, protect everyone that was there, and also make sure that everyone in the neighborhood knew that they were safe and secure. That unfortunately something bad had occurred, but people in the surrounding area were safe. It was a horrific scene. I saw it. The fact that these two children had to go through this is just disgusting to me, and it just brings tears to my eyes, and I'm sure it did to all of you who responded and saw it firsthand. I'll never know what you do every day, but I admire and respect what you do every day. We hear a lot about public safety in these days and age. I have always supported the police department and certainly our staff, and I always will, and I know this council has as well. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the town council, on behalf of our community, thank you for everything you all did. I know it was a team effort. It's always a team effort in this community. People of this community never surprise me when they rise to the occasion. That's what's so great about the Cheshire community. And our PD is no different. Our staff is no different. Our fire department is no different. All of the various facets of our community are no different. We always rise to the occasion. So again, thank you all for your service that night. I know it was a tough scene. I'm sure you're going to carry pieces of that with you forever. God bless you all, and thank you. Any members of the council? No? Thank you again.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Slocum.
can I make a public comment?
Yes, please, of course. That's what I was asking. Yes.
Thank you very much. Rob, as acknowledged by Chief Drive, this is your last meeting, official meeting before the public and together with your colleagues up here. I've served with you for 4 terms, 8 years. The first year we were side by side, and then the next 2 years I was, or 3 terms, you were chair. And this was a wonderful experience for the whole council. I want to just say thank you on behalf of all of us, but really to acknowledge what you've been able to do, not only for our group up here, but for the community as a whole. You're a young boy from Naugatuck? I think you're the best thing to come over since seamless rubber tires, or whatever they made over there at Uniroyal. And your parents obviously did a good job. Monica even must have tempered you even more, because when you joined the council, you came, as you said, with a loud voice, a strong voice, I think it was. I heard a loud voice, but it was a strong voice. But behind that strong voice was tremendous demeanor, determination to just do the best you could do for our town and for this council. And for me personally, it was a time of enrichment, because number one, I learned someone on the council could actually read a contract as good as any attorney we paid. And I, for one, am not criticizing any of those attorneys, but only he brought to the table his game 100%. And that was just about every meeting. And for that, you gained all of our respect, certainly my respect. And I know as a colleague and now certainly a good friend, you'll be missed, you'll be appreciated, and Rob, you'll be called upon again. We think you can serve this town. You'll probably want to continue to serve in some capacity. And I want you to know our arms will embrace the opportunity. Thank you. And I know some of your colleagues may have a few things to add or subtract.
Probably subtract.
But we can leave it at that, and I'll just turn that over to them.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait to the end. Thank you. Mr. Tellett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's strange that I'll be flipping on the microphone and saying that to you for probably the last time during this meeting. But I will echo the sentiments of my colleague. I'll keep it short and sweet and say I want to thank you for your friendship, and I want to thank you for your leadership. I've enjoyed our 8 years together, and I know that you're going to be around. You're not going anywhere. Public service is in your blood. It's proven. I think the speech that you made to the officers that were here tonight is a perfect testament to exactly what you have brought to the table. I mean, no one could have said it better. And thank you.
Mr. Barr, I feel a little funny. I'm calling on people to talk about me. I don't,
There
not
you
very
go.
comfortable
That's
doing
good.
that, I can tell you.
As one
All
was,
you have to say is, I agree with him and we can move on.
That's right.
That's not easy for me.
as one who's had the responsibility and the honor and the privilege that you have had as well, I could tell you I have been in awe of your ability to bring the community together in a collaborative way.
and have everybody work to better the community. I knew that when I first met you about 8 years ago. I know you've been involved in town before that, but when I first met you running, and it is proven to me, seeing it in front of me the last 2 years, that you really have a unique ability to bring people together and a unique way of handling whatever situation comes up to move the community forward in a positive and collaborative way. And I thank you for that.
It's been delightful for 8 years. Sometimes they've been difficult, sometimes they've been easy. I commend you for putting up with your grandmother because sometimes I play mother.
You gotta put up with me too. So
Right.
thank you for that.
But certainly your efforts on behalf of the town and this community have been absolutely wonderful to watch, to enjoy, to be with, to have conversations about. We've not always seen eye to eye on every issue, but I respect every single thing that has happened to bring this town to the place we're at. And like Peter said, your ability to put words to a situation perfectly is to be admired. I, as an older lady, struggle for words. I can write them. It's hard for me to speak them. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you for all this time. And I think you need a little time to go play. Monica would like it if you would come play for a little while, and then we'll expect you back to do some more good things.
Mr. Jinks.
I didn't realize we were going to be doing this tonight. Actually, I thought this was going to come at some point later. I know. I think I know the feeling. But anyway, I don't know you nearly as well as everyone else does up here, but I've certainly observed the way that you do this job for the past 2 years, and I've admired that greatly. You know, your attention to detail. I think Tim mentioned the way you can study a contract is and that and other things that we deal with a lot of information and detail here, and you always bring it 100% to that. And I admire that. I've learned a lot about how to do this job by watching you, and as others have said, the way you can kind of speak to the moment. I think is, you do that time and time again, and it's a reason why I think oftentimes many of us don't have much else to say after you have spoken. So I've enjoyed the time here with you in this past 2 years, and whatever you're going to be doing next, I'm sure you'll be enjoying yourself, and you'll be missed. And as I said, I just appreciate your work ethic and your attention to detail, and all the years of service that you've given to the community is admirable. So thank you.
Thank you. We had the opportunity to meet probably 10, 12 years ago in junior football, and watching you lead that group was pretty amazing to see. You were a strong voice then. Autumn Court charity that you guys ran, you were a strong voice then. The turf at the high school, strong voice then. And then you came onto the council, and you're still a strong voice. And you've been a mentor to me. I feel that, this town owes a great debt of gratitude to what you have done for us, not only in the past 8 years on the council, but prior to that. You've done a lot for this community. And I think, the community is going to miss you as a council member. But I know, like everybody said, you're not going to go far. I have your cell phone on my speed dial. I call you more than I call my wife. So, and I appreciate you taking the time to teach somebody new to the council the ropes and how to do things here. I don't think we'd ever have a stronger voice than what you have. Like Mr. Talbot said, your talk to the police was spot on, and I think that's something that nobody's going to be able to accomplish this way you have done it. And I only hope that, we can continue to move forward the way you have set this ship sailing, and we continue going down the same path. But I appreciate all you've done, not only for the council, for the town of Cheshire, but for me personally. So thank you.
Ladies first.
Yeah, I hope I can get through this without coughing. My dear friend and colleague, You have been a visionary who has inspired us by your leadership, integrity, dedication, and humility. You have made your mark in Cheshire's history, and Cheshire is a better place because of you. Thank you for your guidance, service, commitment, and friendship. It has been a pleasure to serve with you.
Thank you, Sandy. Dave?
Great. Well, shockingly, I'll actually try to keep this short. But it's been a pleasure to have known you over the past 8 years, Rob, and to serve with you the past 4 years. Thank you for your involvement in the town and also in government, for all your dedication to the town and all the things you do, as well as to this council. You have done a great job as the chairman and in leading this council. I wish you all the best in your return to private life. I hope you don't get too bored. But I'm sure you'll have plenty of things to find to fill that time, and as others have suggested, I'm sure if you either get bored or you find that some of us that we're not doing the right things, you'll be back in no time. So we appreciate all that you've done. It's been a great pleasure to serve with you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. And I'll certainly keep my response brief, because tonight should not be about me. It's about this community, which is something that, you've heard me talk about over and over again, what a wonderful community this is. It is. And it's because of all of you together. So while I appreciate some of the personal accolades tonight, we're a team. And the reason we're effective is because we are a team. And every one of us has contributed to that team. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. We bring different perspectives to the table. We have different viewpoints. And to me, that's what good governance is. One of the things that I really wanted to push for when I moved to the chair position was to make sure that every elected official sitting up here had a meaningful voice, because you're elected to do so. Regardless of party affiliation, I hope that anyone that served with me felt like they've had a meaningful voice, because that was really what I tried to accomplish. Because in my opinion, it's the only way to have effective governance, is to have all of us rowing in a direction, sometimes maybe rowing against each other, but nonetheless, talking things out, hearing differences of opinion, understanding what various components of this community expect. And in the end, I think most of the time we've all made good decisions. And I think the community over the years that I've served is better than where it was when I got here, not because of Rob Orris, but because of the collaboration of the group that served, which is all of us here together. And that's really what this community is about. And that's what I want to end with. I appreciate the personal accolades. I'm one of 9 people up here, and that's all I ever want to be. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that you allowed me to be in this position. I want to thank the community from the bottom of my heart. It has been an absolute privilege to serve all of you. I hope that when you look back at the history with me sitting here, that you've said, you know what, Cheshire came out a little better for having Rob Orris. That was really my goal. And I appreciate everything. It's been an honor to serve with all of you. I know you're all going to continue forward, keeping this community great, making sure this community prospers and stays strong long into the future. Our community deserves that, and I would expect nothing other from all of you. It's what I held myself to for the last 8 years on this council. So thank you all very, very much. Okay, let's move on quickly. We're going to move on to approval of minutes, which include corrections to the minutes of the regular meeting of October 12th, 21, and the special meeting of October 14th, 21. Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Is there a second? Mr. Slocum, any questions or comments on the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to consent calendar. Mr. Borwe.
Mr. Chairman, be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 111621-1, the consent calendar for November 16, 2021.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Borwe. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Borwe.
Mr. Chairman, the generosity of this community continues to be overwhelming. Over $10,000 in gifts that we're accepting, and almost $15,000 in gifts again from various organizations to help their fellow citizens and neighbors and friends, and that's what community means. So I urge adoption of this.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Any questions or comments on the consent calendar from members of the council? Seeing none. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to old business, which is discussion regarding our legislative recommendations. And I'm sure you've all seen in your packet a draft list from Town Manager Kimball for the going forward legislative recommendations. It is certainly not a complete list. It's a starting point, as I understand it, Sean. This is yours to carry forward. I'm certainly not going to have any input into this, but I think it's a good start. And with that, I'll turn it to you, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you summarized there, and just as a reminder for everyone, sorry for the feedback there, the legislative session for 2022 will run from February 9th to May 4th. So our tradition here in Cheshire is in advance of the deliberations of our legislative delegation. We'd like to finalize in the next month or so, hopefully by early January, our final list of legislative priorities. What I've done since the last meeting is this is now, I think, the last packet we had last year's as a starting point. We've taken what you'll see here in terms of general legislative requests, the three major areas that we'd like to see and focus our attention on. Juvenile justice reform again, and its impact on local crime with respect to car break-ins and car thefts remains a top priority for us and for the police department. Prevailing wage, again, as a reminder, back in 2017, the prevailing wage requirements were increased for new construction valued at $400,000 up to $1 million. But at the time, the requirements for renovation projects, which frankly are a bulk of what we do, remained at $100,000. So we feel this ideally would be up to the same level at $1 million. We've proposed for the last few years, 400,000 or 500,000. Just really any progress we could make there would greatly help, especially as we're starting to enter an inflationary environment. It just doesn't go as far as it used to. And again, we'd also like to see that, speaking of inflation, indexed for CPI or something going forward, so this number doesn't have to continue to exist in its finite form. So again, the prevailing wage is a key thing that we'd like to see to help save our Cheshire taxpayers some money. And finally, binding arbitration. Again, we've talked about this for a number of years, but we would really like to see, frankly, for both sides, some certainty with respect to binding arbitration cases and the endless amount of time that they can go on, really to no one's advantage. So we've requested for that again. And then similar to last year, we have two Cheshire-specific requests, one that we asked for last year and I testified on last year, which is the transfer of the school bus depot property. Unfortunately, that did not make it to be called up last year in the final hours, but we are optimistic that we can get that through this upcoming year. So a reminder to our delegation. And then just one new one that actually I've been working on with Economic Development Coordinator Andrew Martelli. We've had some recent meetings with local businesses, including our number one taxpayer, Bizzuto's. And, they're really, I think, as we're seeing a nationwide labor shortage, they're very concerned with their ability to get folks to work into facilities in the north part of town, like Bizzuto's, like Macy's, along Nodder Drive, even the Kurtz Farm properties. So one thing we've been looking at, and I know this isn't strictly a legislative item, so to speak, but it is a state item that I think our legislative delegation could help us influence, is the current CT Transit bus comes up. If you look on the third page there, I kind of drew a map. That red line is where the bus route goes currently. Bizzuto's and the other businesses in the area have been pushing for a long time and would really like to see some public transit access to their area. So we'd like to propose, and you'll see I kind of did a brief write-up there, that they run at least some of their buses, doesn't have to be all of them, but at least some of the buses could be expanded along that blue route you see there, down Schoolhouse, up over and around to Nodder Drive, and then back onto Waterbury Road. So again, open to suggestions and ideas, but this is something we just wanted to put pen to paper, responsive to a request from one of our very important businesses here in town. And also open to any other ideas or thoughts or suggestions on how we can help them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Barwi?
Just on that last point, we used to have a shuttle that picked people up here at Town Hall for the prison, for visitors and things. So do we still have that shuttle?
I'm not aware of it per se, so
Okay,
I
so
don't, it may have been discontinued. but I'm
This
not
will
aware.
allow that to, in effect, continue, because that was an important thing for visitors to come through and to make it convenient, and that was an important aspect of things. So I think that this alternating between the red line and the blue line, the existing line that we have in service and the new facility, the new line to go through our businesses will resurrect that service, which was important to have. So that's great. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Veliver?
Thank you. And maybe this is a question, Sean, and for Chief Grant. Are there any aspects of the police accountability bill that we still need to address or that we still have concerns about that we want to bring forward?
So I can't speak for Chief Drive per se, but I did have a conversation with him about that. I think a number of those elements, I think from his perspective, the ship has sailed on some of the key items that we had brought up last year directly in response. And I think some are being worked on through various tweaks to the bill and through things that have to go through post. So again, I'd prefer that he speak to it directly. I can certainly have him maybe give a memo to the council that kind of outlines his thoughts, but that I did communicate with him and we had that conversation before recommending that we focus on the juvenile justice reform as opposed to the police accountability bill that we had on last year.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Other questions or comments? Just from my perspective, Sean, for whatever it's worth at this point, I think this is a great idea to try to get more labor access to the areas that need it. Certainly in light of everything that's going on, I would hope that our state government would recognize the needs of our business community and be open-minded to consider making some modifications to bus routes to not only help the employers, but to help employees get access to good quality jobs. So it's certainly something we welcome here in Cheshire, I would think. So I don't know what we need to do as a group, but I would certainly be happy to help advocate with our state legislative body and anyone else that we need to try to make some modifications to this. Because while I wasn't really thinking about this, I'm really happy that you brought this up. I think it could make a meaningful change positively for this community, for employers and employees. So thank you for that. And what's your timeline, Sean, that you want to, just for the rest of the council, so they know what you're kind of shooting for?
Well, I mean, in the past, we've done the session with our delegation. Typically we've done it, I think, once in December and once in January. I think it'll kind of depend on, December gets a little crowded and we need to make sure we send up invitations to give them enough notice. So again, it'll be, ultimately it's up to the council when you'd like to schedule it. But if we'd like to do, I guess we're sort of targeting the first week in January, unless we wanted to try to squeeze one in, a joint meeting with the delegation, unless we did sort of a second meeting in December kind of timeframe. So we'll look at the calendar and see, but that's sort of what we're thinking. I think pushing towards the end of January, from what we understand, was too late for them to sometimes be able to put bills in, even though this is a short session. As I understand it, they're supposed to only put new bills in that have budget implications. But you can usually tweak a budget implication into most bills you write. So I know the sooner we get it, they've appreciated that in the past. And certainly I know there's some deadlines with respect to land conveyances that are also maybe another week or two earlier than the session. So I know we want to get it in and not miss any deadlines. So I think if there's anything else to add to it, we'd love to get that feedback soon. And otherwise, I guess it's getting closer to final once the council's comfortable with it.
Thank you, Sean. Nothing else from anyone? No? Okay, John, thank you. Move on to 9, new business. Item A, discussion of possible approval of the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments Hazard and Mitigation Plan update. I believe we have the representative from Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments, correct? Welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. There we are. Good evening, Victoria Vitri with SLR Consulting. We worked with Naugatuck Valley Council of Government on the multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan update. So the plan is before you this evening for adoption. So I'm going to give you a couple highlights of the plan and also discuss some of the latest developments that I believe you have before you tonight. So this is Cheshire's third time adopting a plan. So the second update to the hazard mitigation. Previously, Cheshire had a single jurisdiction, so now you'll be part of the entire regional plan. The document itself has a multi-jurisdiction plan component, so that discusses the regional vulnerabilities and hazards and strategies and actions. There's also several appendices. These appendices have information such as, meeting minutes, fact sheets, and things like that. The Cheshire Annex is a component of the regional plan. This is where you have the specific information for the Cheshire community regarding the risks, the hazards, and some of the specific strategies and actions that have been identified in the planning meetings. The document itself, currently before you for adoption, has gone through a pretty rigorous review. It goes through our staff at SLR. It goes through the Naugatuck Valley Council of Government, the NVCOG staff. It has also been to DEMIS and FEMA. So it goes back and forth between a few different entities for review and revision. And it has also been to the town for review and revision as well. Those folks that were included in the planning meeting at the initial phase of the plan. So as of right now, FEMA has given us a pending approval pending adoption. So as of right now, FEMA has considered this satisfactory. So in order for the town to continue to be eligible for FEMA grant funding, such as the hazard mitigation grant funding, or the recent program BRIC, I'm sure most communities have heard of the new BRIC funding, Building Resilient Infrastructure funding. So in order to be eligible for those, every community needs an active and adopted plan. In addition to those highlights, there's been some recent discussion concerning Huckins Road. So I believe you have before you an errata sheet that we've developed to include for adoption this evening. So this errata, while it won't go to FEMA, this is really more for community-specific changes and edits to the plan. So the errata that you have before you tonight does two things. It helps to clarify and specify some of the specific flood risks to Cuff Brook. That way it's in the plan and going forward for all of these for the community's planning, going forward for the next 5 years, you understand, the specific flood risk along that brook. And it also specifies action CHR-07, which is a specific action that urges the town to apply as a sponsor to aid the private property owners along Huckins Road to basically help them apply for FEMA funding. A private resident can't apply for this funding. So this action is really just to urge the community to support this grant funding, or this grant application rather. So again, the errata does not go to FEMA as it stands right now. The plan has been approved by FEMA. The errata is for a community level change, clarification, and information going forward when planning. I believe those are all of my highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions, but like I said, it is before you folks this evening for adoption. So,
Thank you. Questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Slocum.
Yeah, really specific to this new piece that was added. So in the event there is an issue with one of those crossways that goes to a private residence, the town would have to act on their behalf to make a FEMA application?
right. So what it is that if you were to pursue any hazard mitigation grant funding or the BRIC funding, the town is it's a town, a municipality, or a state entity that is able to apply for this FEMA grant funding. So if you were to pursue this grant funding, the town would basically have to enact as the
pass-through.
Exactly. Yeah, the pass-through. Right. So this specific action is, has been brought up in the meeting. I believe it's kind of a general action, but it's sufficient enough that FEMA would approve of the grant application. They would see that this aligns with the grant application. So this is really just urging the town to support any future and act as the pass-through for the grant funding application. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Barwe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite familiar with other organizations that I work with, hazardous mitigation and risk management plans, and this is excellent. It really is a big piece of what helps a community rest and be comfortable at peace, especially policymakers like us and management like the town manager to put us at rest. This is actually the topic that I spoke to the town manager about when I first got reelected back 2 years ago, was we need something like this to be updated, and this is great. I think it is thorough and should put residents at ease that we have a plan if there are things that are go awry. And risk management is very important. I think this is great. I very much support this, and I'm very glad that you folks did it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I'll keep
Thank you,
talking
Mr.
if
No,
you
no,
want.
no, that's okay. Thank you, Mr. Barr. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
And I know we have some members of the audience that are up in that Huckins Road area, and I'll certainly give you an opportunity to speak in a minute. We just received this errata sheet. This is brand new. So we just got it today, as a matter of fact. I'm very uncomfortable at this point trying to figure out what it all means and voting on it. Can an errata sheet be added to the mitigation plan? So I'm comfortable with the mitigation plan, the main plan. We spent a lot of time and effort on it. Staff has spent a lot of time and effort on it. I'm very comfortable with it. And I'd like to move that forward tonight and vote for it. I think I would like more information on this errata sheet and more information relative to how we can help these individuals, but certainly make sure that we're not encumbering the town in any way, shape, or form, setting some precedent that we could be uncomfortable with. It's just very quick to be added onto our table tonight. So can we add an errata sheet if the council is comfortable at a later date?
Yeah, an errata sheet is something that can be added at any point in time during, the life of the plan. And we actually do urge communities to do an annual review and an annual update on the plan, revisit it on an annual basis. And whether that's, however you would prefer to keep track of your progress on the strategies and the actions. Some communities do the errata because things change over the 5 years.
Sure.
So absolutely, an errata can be added at any time. The one before you this evening doesn't have any major changes, which is something to know about the errata sheet in itself. Because FEMA has already essentially approved this upon your adoption, it's really important to not make major changes to any plan. So really the point of the errata is to help clarify and specify. As you would know in this errata, it's just providing a little more information or providing a little more specificity. Things don't always come through the way they should in a planning meeting. So just to get to the point, right, the errata can be added at any time, and it's really to help drive the planning process. So none of the actions or the strategies are any sort of mandate or anything like that. It's to help guide the planning over the next 5 years of the life.
Okay.
So it kind of helps develop the plan in greater depth. So yes, you can add it at any time, but that is.
So let me ask you this. I'm just a bit aware of the issue with some of these residents there, and I'm certainly sympathetic to it. And I would be in favor of trying to support and help them in any way we can. I personally don't believe that we should be using local taxpayer dollars to do that. But to the extent that there is some federal grant money, I certainly would support that. I'm not suggesting that you have to wait a year to add this errata. We could add it 2 weeks down the road or a month down the road or whenever the council and town staff are comfortable. Is that correct?
Right. You can do that without us. Once it's adopted, and it's your plan to do with as you'd like. So you can add an errata every month if you need to help clarify actions and strategies. So, right. You can.
And you believe that we would need this modification in order to allow for these individuals to pursue certain grant money that's not already in this mitigation plan?
I don't think you need the errata. No. So I think as of right now, that action CHR-07, I think as it stands right now is sufficient. So if the town were to support a grant application in this upcoming, so as of right now, both BRIC and the hazard mitigation grant funding programs are open. So as of right now, if the town wanted to support a grant application pertaining to the upgrades of these culverts, assuming that adoption goes through before the grant application goes in, this would be sufficient. Again, the errata is just to help specify and guide, future planning efforts, right? It's to help, if somebody were to pick this up, a new staff member of Cheshire tomorrow, then this errata helps go into a little bit more depth into what's going on. But the plan as it stands is sufficient for applying for current grant funding
Okay, so
opportunities.
I'm a little confused then. So why are we even talking about this? If this provides them the comfort, in your opinion, that they need, why are we talking about adding something last minute that none of us have had an opportunity to review and discuss?
No, that's a valid question. Again, it's to help, I keep saying to help guide the process. It's just to provide a little more information, a little more detail about the risk of Cuff Brook, because it wasn't brought up in the original planning phase as in depth as the errata presents. We want to ensure that it's kind of on the table going forward, so that future planning efforts and future resilience and hazard mitigation strategies down the road, especially in 5 years when the town goes to update it, that way Cuff Brook and any, if the issue along Huckins Road isn't addressed within 5 years, at the next update, that errata sheet is included with your plan. So that way it goes into the next plan. So you don't need to continue to add erratas for, Huckin roads or any other challenges. So it's basically building out your plan over 5 years. And then once you do your update, you can revisit everything and kind of put it back into a new updated plan. So I understand the concern, and it's really just to help, specify some of the issues that were brought to our attention. I believe this morning or yesterday, the challenge at Cuff Brook was brought up. So we just want to make sure that information is going in there. So again, the errata you can add that at any time. And again, I don't think it's not integral to them applying for FEMA grant funding as it stands right now.
Okay.
So.
Sean or Arnett, anything that you'd like to add to this? Again, although we've been somewhat aware of this scenario, some of the issues with the private residents up there and their deteriorating bridges, and then it's certainly evolved now into this, which is new. This letter, as far as I know, we just received today.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm very uncomfortable adding it last minute until the council's had an opportunity to talk to staff in a meaningful way, make sure that we talk to our town attorney in a meaningful way, and that we've thought through it. This council's always been very thoughtful in the decisions we make, and I am prepared to vote on the main hazardous mitigation plan, but I personally won't vote on this errata tonight. I'm not suggesting that it isn't something I couldn't be comfortable with in a week or two with the right conversation, but that's where I stand tonight. So Sean and Arnett, anything that you would like to add? No. Mr. D'Onofrio?
Yeah, I certainly would request that you not approve the errata. This is the first time I've seen it, so I would like an opportunity to talk to Sean about it as well.
Okay, thank you. I know we have some members of the public here, and I don't want you to walk away thinking that somehow we're not trying to be supportive. We're just trying to be thorough and make sure that we have what I perceive the appropriate opportunity to review information, digest it, and make sure we're making the appropriate decision. So that's really the reason for my comments that I just made. But I certainly would like to give anyone in the audience that has some meaningful conversation relative to this, please come up, give us your name and address for the record. You can do so now.
I like
Just for the record?
Becky Mines, 1654 Huckins Road. I'm one of the homeowners.
Thank you.
Mines. I, like Councilwoman Nichols, I'm much more literate when it comes to my written word than my vocal, so please bear with me. I would like, it's a very significant issue going on over there, so I apologize for my emotion. I would like to ask that the town please postpone approval of the hazard mitigation plan until you have gone through and you've spoken with your attorneys and done your investigation and stuff like that. That's needed, and so it would be included in the final document as it goes through. I would actually like to request that. One thing that is not actually being addressed is that at the time those homes were built, the culverts were adequate at the time for the amount of water flow that was going through. In recent years, the 84 was reconstructed, and it has been known that the drainage from the 84 and all those lanes are actually now go into Cuff Brook. And as a result, it is turned into a very dangerous, imminent situation that the culverts aren't even able to withstand in any way, shape, or form. For instance, my culvert alone, the amount of velocity and flash flood that comes through there is actually deteriorated inside the culvert. You can see the rebar and everything. I mean, the thing is just coming apart. I welcome any of you to come and look at the scenario. At this point, sorry, my voice is kind of quivering here. I did apply for an EWP grant. We were approved for that through FEMA. They did come out and they looked at the erosion and the significance of what was going on. We have also been notified that if applied for, we more than likely would be eligible for the BRIC grant, given the scenario of everything that's gone on. I am more than welcome to show you video footage and photographs of this thing. For instance, my bridge alone, they're all varying different heights. My bridge alone is 10 feet up from Cuff Brook. And over the summer with the rain that we've had, and like I said, it's been very significant. It goes it can go the width of the retaining walls, the waterway, excuse me. And my bridge is roughly 10 feet up. And the last storm that we had, the water was literally within inches from going over the top. I don't know how to express upon you guys that this is not a brook. This is a flash flood drainage from the 84. And recently, one of the residents in one of the recent storms, their bridge blew out because the amount of velocity, it's dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. And I don't think you guys really understand that. Yes, it is a bridge of private homeowners, but after the reconstruction of the 84, none of this is adequate anymore. And it's a dangerous and imminent situation. So I respectfully request that you please include the errata. It gives more specifics of what is actually going on in that scenario, and not just private property culverts, and that you please postpone the final vote or the vote tonight for the hazard mitigation plan until actually you've done the research that you so need and feel more comfortable doing. I would also request that you consider beyond the hazardous mitigation plan, that you consider the Cuff Brook watershed and identify it as a risk in any other kind of planning and stuff that you do, because it is an imminent problem. I extend the invitation to any of you who would like to come and see the scenario, to view my video footage, to see my photos. It's a very scary situation, and it's not quite what it's not just a simple culvert thing on private property. When C-84 was put in, it's turned into a whole different situation, and it's scary. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, first, thank you for coming up and giving us the information you can. Certainly no apologies necessary for being emotional. I get emotional a lot up here as well, so I understand that. So no apologies necessary. I do have a couple of questions, but I'd like to go to the council members first. Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have the ability to get us the videos that we could see prior to any vote on the errata, or?
Yes, I have them on my computer. When I've tried to send them even to the FEMA representative, Mr. Aguar, the videos were too large. So I can come up with some way to get them to you so you guys have an idea of what we're looking at.
Is there any way we could get get it onto a thumb drive or something because then I can upload it to like a Google Docs or something that could be shared with the entire council?
I can do that.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
I think it's important that we take a look at those.
Yes, I can do that. I have video footage and stuff as far back as 2011 when I was noticing the significant water. It had been going on for a little bit, and it's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't a fluke. This isn't just a random storm. This is something. Wait a minute, what the heck is going on here? So that's when so in 2011, I know the 84 reconstruction was done sooner than that, but that's kind of the time where I'm like, there's an issue. And then I've taken recent footage. Unfortunately, I do have footage and photographs of the storms that happened over the summer, September, August. And problem is that the bulk of the flash flooding was happening in the dark. So you can kind of see the water, you can see the top of the bridge, and you can see the glistening of the water, which if you're thinking 10 feet up, you wouldn't be seeing any glistening of any water, from where I'm standing. So I will definitely get you the information.
Thank
the
you.
video footage and stuff and photos.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Mr. Wall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you very much for coming forward with this information. It's difficult to hear, when we all own homes and we have no control over what's going to happen to them. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think we do need to see the pictures and the video to see what's going on up there. Maybe Sean or somebody, how many homes do these are on Huckins, does that affect that have the bridges? Do you have an idea? There's 4?
Are there 3 driveways and 4 homes? Is that correct? Or there's one that's shared, or there's 4 separate driveways?
No, there's 4 separate
4 separate
driveways.
culverts.
The current situation is that the one bridge that was blown out, I'm number 2, so starting up closest to the 84, coming down, they're in quick succession. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm number 2. Bridge number 4 was blown out with the amount of water that came through, and they are using bridge number 3. The 2 property owners worked together and since they plowed away, but got a bulldozer and got a way for the one homeowner to cut across the property and use the bridge number 3.
And are the others also around 10 feet high? Or
I'm probably the tallest. 1 and 3 are similar, and 4 is lower.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Other questions, comments? Mr. Slocum.
Well, just in reading this, it simply is asking that the 10-mile river and tributaries include Cuff Brook, because that was omitted by error or oversight or whatever. But what is different is that it actually states what has occurred there. Now, not that you can necessarily answer the question, but how important is that errata to the document as a whole? I believe your testimony, and I'm sorry I've forgotten your name, was that it's not critical that it be in there, that it would be covered. I believe that's what you said. And I not you,
Oh.
but the staff professional associated with the document who made the presentation. Is that in fact correct? If you want to come to the microphone.
No, you're okay. You're okay. So, right. So this is like I said, the erratas for a little more specificity. Cuff Brook is mentioned in some portions of the document. So it's identified as a stream and as a tributary in a general hydrologic review aspect of the annex. This errata is really going into a little bit more in depth in the specific flood risks. So this is a kind of a different section. Again, this is for this information to carry over for future iterations. Really what FEMA, when looking and adopting and approving a plan, FEMA wants to ensure that if you're applying for a grant through them, they want to ensure that the actions have been identified in that planning process. So really that's the bulk of what they're concerned about. The information in the errata is just to supplement and again, provide more detail. So it's not critical for supporting a grant, for example, which is really the action that we're kind of discussing this evening. It's just for greater detail.
Now going to Ms. Means. Did I recall you saying that you had applied for and been accepted for one of the BRIC grants, or did I miss?
Not
hear that?
BRIC, EWP, we got accepted for the EWP, which is the Emergency Watershed Grant, and FEMA did approve us for 75% coverage, and they said, I think they said, or Mr. Chris Sullivan had mentioned to the town of Cheshire that that they're looking for Cheshire to adopt, and they said the BRIC program works the same way, where the town of Cheshire would sponsor 25%. They said it could be in cash, it could be in permits, it could be in supplies, it could be in, it doesn't really matter, just to show the sponsorship of such. But yes, we do have the EWP grant on the books. We were actually officially approved for that.
So the
Through FEMA.
potential here exists for you to basically get 100% coverage with the 25% gifting from the town under BRIC. Is that what I just interpreted your statement?
No.
I misinterpreted.
Well, my understanding is that even like with the BRIC, it would work this similar way, where the town would have to sponsor. The town has to apply on our behalf.
Right.
And then whatever money we have, then the town would, they said, be a part of it. Now, not specifically finances or anything else. It was also explained to me that the hazard mitigation plan would open with the town being the middleman that you had mentioned.
Pass-through.
Yeah, that any other kind of grants and stuff that are out there, our hands are kind of tied as homeowners because we're private, versus the town has a whole ability to apply for X, Y, and Z that we wouldn't have access to. And one of the significant things that has come into place is the 84 and the runoff of the 84, which has turned it into a very different situation than when we purchased the homes.
Okay, thank you for that. Now it's clear. It's kind of like what happens with ball and socket. They make an application for mitigation of property, and like the town acts as a pass-through. I'm not sure it's total equivalent, but it's not a role we haven't played before. It's just whether or not we're somehow also responsible. I guess that's one of would be our greatest concern. That's all.
No, I understand that and I respect that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Slocum. It's not clear to me as to what the town's responsibilities are. And that's why I'm not going to support this errata sheet tonight. I am very comfortable with the hazard mitigation plan as presented. I'm not sure why we should consider tabling the hazard mitigation plan when we've heard that whatever opportunities are out there are certainly available today with this mitigation plan to these homeowners. We could belt and suspender it a little bit more with a little further due diligence and consideration of the errata going down the road. But nothing changes that I'm hearing in terms of potential support to the homeowners. So what am I missing?
With all due respect, the way it was explained to me is that with it specifically in there, because Cuff Brook isn't mentioned and there's other waterways and stuff like that that are mentioned, that it kind of eliminates the Cuff Brook. And I understand that Victoria had said that it doesn't, it doesn't affect anything. I was also advised that it does. And so that's why the additions were put in, for it to be more specific, to include Cuff Brook as, at the time we were told that it was not identified as an issue. They weren't even aware. And that's why it was added. I was also told it would have been in the original document if they were aware of the situation and the significance of it.
Mr. Talbot.
I was just wondering, Mr. Chair, if we could get the town attorney to weigh in on what his interpretation of that is.
My understanding is that the plan itself can't be amended at this point, other than through the errata. Right? Because it's it's FEMA approved pending adoption. So the plan itself wouldn't be where you would cover the concerns that are being addressed right now. They'd be covered through the errata. So there's no reason not to approve the plan.
Yes.
I, is this okay? Oh, I was advised today, and again, this is all new to me. I'm learning the same as all of you, that this would be the appropriate time before the final approval of it, because once the final approval, it makes it more difficult to put in the errata versus the errata is there at the time of the where it goes in with the original document. And that's why I'm sincerely requesting that whether it's a week or two or whatever, that you, Mr. Orris, was saying that you need to do additional investigation. I'm respectfully requesting that you please hold off on the final adoption without, just to give you time to go through the errata so it can go through that process.
Thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, I would just say that maybe the person who gave you the advice was not aware of the fact that it has already been approved by FEMA. As the town attorney said, we don't have a choice, and we don't want to put the rest of the town at risk when there is a solution to this issue by doing the errata to take care of Cuffbrook, which is mentioned on 1-4, but it would be mentioned in more detail in an errata. So it is mentioned in there. So maybe who gave you that advice wasn't aware that it's already been approved. And this is our only opportunity to protect the whole town. And then we can, in a further abundance of caution, add in specifically Cuffbrook and the related. And I think we need to bring the state involved in that and the federal, because it's a federal highway that has an issue there too, and get their support for this as well. But I wouldn't want to count on them being as helpful.
DEP is very much aware and involved.
Yeah, so hopefully they could support when we do the errata to it to make sure that it's emphasized. But it is mentioned in 1-4. And quite frankly, I'm going to support this because we don't have a choice. It's already been approved. And maybe the person who said to you, this is an opportunity, didn't realize it was already approved.
May I
Sure.
ask a question to Victoria really quick?
I'm not.
Yes,
do
I
you
would
mind-
like to wrap it up though. So if you can give us your final comments and then we're going to move forward, please.
I'd like to ask her a question first. It's kind of imperative. One moment, please.
Right. So what it is that I don't know if you misunderstood, because the errata can be added at any time. I'm not aware that it is, but it can get added. So I don't think that there's not a chance that it will be omitted. Towns do include erratas after, so just to reassure you in that this isn't something that is never done after adoption. So that is it has been done and it can be done.
Okay.
For sure.
I'm good. So I thank you for listening to me. Thank you for the time to speak to you. I appreciate it. And would you still like the videos and photos and stuff?
Yes,
like
of
that?
course. That would be very helpful.
Okay.
I appreciate that. So just so you understand what I think will happen is we are going to bring this main hazard mitigation plan vote to fruition tonight. It has been approved by FEMA. It's been worked at length through staff in collaboration with the Naugatuck Valley COG as well as our consultants, SLR. So we're very comfortable with the main report. I certainly hear what you have to say relative to your specific situation. And for me, at least, I'm interested in knowing more about how we can assist through some errata or errata, whatever we call this thing, errata sheet, word I never heard of. But again, we need to dot our I's and cross our T's on this before we do it. And I'm not seeing any reason not to support the main mitigation plan tonight. So I'm going to forward it for a vote and I will support it as well. with the understanding that we'll look at your situation and potentially, depending on what our findings are in further conversation with our professionals, maybe adding it through the errata. Okay?
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Any other members of the public like to come up and speak on this issue?
Hi, good evening. My name is Kimberly Mines, and I also reside at the same address. I'm a little bit more versed on the history, I guess, of when the homes were constructed in '99, and I would also like to raise the issue of how the bridges, essentially the permit for each of the 4 bridges was brought to the town. And while certain aspects of the construction had been approved by the town manager, it was also pending, the completion of the bridges was pending final approval. And even though the town did not give the final approval for these bridges as constructed at the time. Of course, this was prior to the '84 flash flooding, but even back then when it truly was a stream, the town did not actually approve, the final construction as the bridges are currently. And I raise this issue because as we can, fairly assume, the properties have been taxed as if there had been a permit. That's one aspect, which is a dilemma in and of itself. The second concern is essentially that the town did not follow up with the construction, which had not been approved and did not get a permit. So this is going back, some years to '99, well before the flash flooding began. But I would like to raise that there's been some history as well in terms of there being some ethical dilemmas around, where responsibility really originated for the poor condition of these bridges. And we've been paying taxes for these bridges that were not approved for, or I'm just saying in terms of the improvements on the property. So just wanted to bring that up as well.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
No, other than the fact that I think what I'm hearing is that you're suggesting that the town may have some culpability in the current deteriorated state of these bridges because they weren't properly inspected and therefore weren't built correctly. Is that what you're suggesting?
And yeah, to some extent I am. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to be clear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the council on that? No? Okay. Anybody else relative to the Cuff Brook issue? Any other questions or comments relative to the hazardous mitigation plan? I believe we do have a motion on the table,
I
correct?
didn't move it yet.
You did not move it. Okay, thank you. I forgot.
All right, that's okay.
Then I would ask for Mr. Barber if you can please move it.
All right. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 110921-2. Be it resolved that the town council adopts the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments Hazard Mitigation Plan update for 2021-2026 as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Are there any questions or comments from members of the council on this matter? In addition to what we just heard?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The council is not using the date of 09. The resolutions should be 111621-2.
I did not see updated motions. It's just a number, which happens to correspond with a date, but it's just a number. Did you send an update? Did we change all the motions? Well, I thought I assimilated the new and the old
You know what?
together,
It's
but I guess
attached to
not.
consent. It's attached.
So
to consent.
I'll thank you for clarifying that. I thought I put them together, but.
Do you have it, Dave? Because I'm not sure I have.
I do not, but I will accept Mrs. Milton's, that it's number 111621-2. But it is, be it resolved that the town council adopts the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments Hazardous Mitigation Plan update for 2021-2026 as presented.
Thank you. So we have a motion. We have by Mr. Barry, second, Mr. Slocum. We are modifying the resolution number to reflect what?
That it's 111621-2.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Do we have any questions or comments regarding this matter? Seeing none. For a vote, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And thank you for being here tonight and giving us your information. Okay, we're going to move on to item 9B, which is authorization to apply for the DEP Connecticut Recreational Trails Grant. Ms. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resolution, it reads, correct number, I believe. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 111621-3. Be it resolved that the town council authorizes the application for the DEP Connecticut Recreational Trails Grant for the purpose of installing chicanes on the Farmington Canal Linear Trail at the West Main Street crossing.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Nichols.
Yes, this has been an ongoing problem that we all know. When the trail crossed with West Main Street, we installed the Hawk system, and it's been there right since the beginning to try and make that crossing across West Main Street safer. It's been observed and documented that the users are not utilizing the Hawk system, and some are crossing that intersection at a high rate of speed on bicycles or on vehicles going up and down West Main Street. So the town instituted some temporary measures that were to slow the pedestrians and the cyclists as they crossed, and they were chicanes. We were trying to encourage them to use the Hawk system. It helped a little bit, but it was not significant. So with this funding that we're looking for, we would like to replace the permanent offset gates replace the gates now with a permanent offset gate to slow the traffic on the trail, to keep both the drivers and the pedestrians or bicyclists safer. So this grant will cover 80% of the total project costs, and the town will be required to match the 20%. So the total project cost is estimated to be approximately $30,000. So I would support this, certainly for the safety of the trail goers, the bicyclists, and the motorists that go up and down West Main, and it will make that West Main Street area streetscape much safer.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, the only thing I would add to this, I'm certainly going to support it as well. And I think we've all talked about this a bit. This Hawk lighting system is a disaster, in my opinion. I just think it's a tragedy waiting to happen. The lighting there, in my opinion, is very confusing. I know the state has kind of dictated to my understanding as to how that needs to operate, but I really, in addition to these chicanes, would like to reach out to whether it's our legislative body or whoever we need to at the state to collaborate how we could modify that to be safer. It's very confusing. At least it is to me and to a lot of people who have called me to say they really don't know how to react to those with the double blinking red lights, the double solid lights, and then, the way it goes, it just seems very confusing to me. And I think in addition to the chicanes, that's another issue that needs to be addressed to make sure we make that area safe as possible. So I may be one of the only ones worried about that, but I am hearing from the public that they find it very confusing as well, and I do. So I guess that's my comment. But with that, I'll call for a vote on the chicanes. All those in favor? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to 9C, which is authorization to apply for 2022 Public Educational and Governmental Programming and Educational Technology Investment Account, the PEG-PESHA account, which is more commonly known, grant program. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 111621-4. Be it resolved that the Town Council authorizes application for the 2022 Public Educational and Governmental Programming and Educational Technology Investment Account, PEG-PESHA, grant program for upgraded and replacement video and broadcast equipment for approximately $38,000.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Mr. Walsh.
The town secured two previous PEG-PESHA grants that totaled over around $228,000, which funded the original installation of the video and broadcasting equipment that are in this chambers and in conference room 207. Seeing what happened with the pandemic last year, and we ended up using this equipment quite a bit. It's important to make sure that we have the technology up to date, and hopefully we don't have what happened the last 2 years happen again. But we need to make sure that we have every way of getting the messages that we talk about in this room out to the public. So they're applying for this grant to cover the cost of some needed upgrades and some of the older equipment that are at the end of life right now.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those, I'm sorry. Peter? Mr. Talbot, sorry. Didn't
Sorry,
see you.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. Being somewhat familiar with the company that provides some of this grant money that is administered by Pura, I am absolutely thrilled to see that one of the local communities is tapping into it yet again. This has really done a great job, and I think Don did a nice job of talking about it in his explanation, that this really helps us get the word out to the public. So I'm thrilled to see this. I would question Arnett on the use of the 38, but I'm sure it came from the man behind the curtain. So, Mike, thank you for your work on making sure we remain a state-of-the-art broadcast facility, so to speak. So, and I absolutely will support this.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 9D, discussion of possible action regarding opioid litigation opt-in. Ms. Nichols.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Town Council authorize Resolution 111621-5. Be it resolved that the Town Council authorizes participation in the proposed national prescription opiate litigation settlements.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Nichols.
Yeah, I'm going to just ask Attorney D'Onofrio to give us a very brief description. This is similar type of a program when drugs are mishandled, that we participate in different settlements. And if you would
Sure.
and explain it fairly briefly.
Sure. There's 4 categories of opioid litigation in the United States right now. There's the bankruptcy litigation with Purdue Pharma that's received a disproportionate amount of publicity. There are civil and criminal actions brought by state and local governments in federal court. There are state court litigations, including in Connecticut, by municipalities directly against various distributors and manufacturers of opioids. Cheshire's not a plaintiff in those cases. And then there's civil actions by the states. The national opioid litigation is referenced to what's known as multi-district litigation, 3,000 cases that have been brought by the feds, states, and local governments, all of which have been consolidated in the Northern District of Ohio. So there are 2 settlement agreements that are proposed. One is with the 3 largest pharmaceutical distributors in this country. The other is with Janssen, which is a Johnson & Johnson entity. The terms of the settlement provide that the three pharmaceutical companies, distributors will pay $21 billion into the fund over 18 years. Janssen will pay $5 billion into the fund over 9 years. Out of the $26 billion, almost $23 billion is going to be distributed to the states. The amount that gets distributed to the municipalities and all of the funding has to be used for prevention, education, and treatment of opioid-related issues. The amount depends on the participation level. If at least 95% of the stakeholders don't opt in to the settlement, then the settlement will not be approved by the court. So the other municipalities that I'm representing, 100% have agreed to opt in. Cheshire's not a plaintiff in any of the individual lawsuits. So this is Cheshire's opportunity without incurring any cost to participate at some level in receiving funds through the state of Connecticut, through the national settlement agreements to be applied to education about opioid use and abuse and any treatment and other assistance programs that you may find appropriate.
Thank you, Attorney D'Onofrio. Ms. Nichols, anything to add?
No, I think it's a pretty easy no-brainer. We want to get in line for any money that's available, so I would support this completely.
Great. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to 9E, discussion and possible call for public hearing regarding the proposed amendments merging Public Safety Commission and Prison Advisory Committee. I will read the resolution and then I'll give you a brief overview. Be it resolved, Town Council approves resolution number 111621-6. I believe that's the right number. Be it resolved, the Town Council shall hold a public hearing to consider amendments to the Code of Ordinance Section 2-78 through 2-81 and 2-87, merging the Public Safety Commission and the Prison Advisory Committee. And be it further resolved, the town manager shall cause a notice of said public hearing to be posted and published according to law. And be it further resolved that the date, time, and place, or any postponements thereof shall be determined by the town manager with the approval of the chairman of the council.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. We've been talking about merging a couple of our committees for a number of reasons. One, we think that they could make these committees a bit more effective. Number two, sometimes we're having difficulty filling volunteer positions on some of these committees, so it's a way for us to hopefully fill up some of these committees with some dedicated people. We can make sure that they have quorums to conduct the work that they need to conduct. But at the end of the day, for me, it's really about merging committees that have a lot of synergy, that I think the collaboration within that committee will be more helpful and effective for the town. So I personally think merging not only this, but the next one, which we'll talk about, makes some sense. What we're calling for tonight is to call a public hearing to begin the conversation with the public regarding this, if people have any thoughts. So we're not approving the merger of it tonight. We're approving the calling for a public hearing. So that's what I'll say about that. Are there any questions or comments from members of the council? Yep, we have a second from Mr. Slope. Oh, no, we had a second from Ms. Nichols already. I'm sorry. Yeah. So we're all set with a motion and a second. The question is, Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question about the process a little bit. Could we, to discuss some of the structure, would we take a step to perhaps send this to, I don't know if it'd be personnel or planning to discuss this a little bit before we go to public hearing?
Well, I think it would, if we wanted to send it to a committee, it'd be more appropriate to go to ordinance. And I know we've had some conversations that ordinance has got a lot on its plate. And the thought, at least in my mind, was that this was something that the full council could handle without sending it into a committee. If it's the group's decision to want to send it into a committee for further deliberation, I'm certainly going to be okay with that.
Okay. I mean, the only, I guess one thing that jumps out at me is that we may want to consider a slightly larger commission. It looks like the proposal here is for it to remain 5 members, which is, I think, what we have on public safety now. It seems to me we might want to maybe expand that a little bit. It's a relatively small group now. If we're going to be adding some some scope to that commission. Seems like maybe an additional person or two might be something to consider. I don't have any objection to merging these particular two necessarily. I do think that perhaps if we could expand the membership a little bit, and then maybe even expand the way that we sort of fill these positions to be a little bit less, allotted to one party or the other, we may have a better success at having a better functioning group going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Certainly good food for thought. And again, we're not voting on the merger. We're voting on a public hearing to discuss it. And I think there will be future opportunities to have more dialogue, certainly over the next many weeks and beyond that. So, I'm open to suggestions. Again, going forward, it's going to be you all without me. So, Mr. Slocum?
I guess the only thing I would add to that is there is a level of urgency to the extent that all of our appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions have to be made by January 31. The respective parties are probably now talking to people whose terms are about to expire, seeking if they're still interested or engaging others to join up. So there is a certain aspect to this. I think it could well stay within the council and get resolved perhaps through the process that takes place after the public hearing. I for one would like to see a document prepared just as this was. I guess we did have Attorney D'Onofrio, you took a look at this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody presented this document for us that was proposed. I would certainly hope that we would have the same after some discussion for the next one we'll be talking about. And then we could probably just button this up, I think, at the next meeting. And that would give us time for all the respective parties to engage with the respective members of those groups. Because that's really what's going to go on here. I think people want to get out of the gate running in the next term so that we're not lacking quorums at these meetings, which has become really the issue.
Well, Mr. Slocum, I agree with you. I think, what I worry about is, we've got committees that are pretty busy. I know ordinance is busy. If this does get referred, that's where it needs to go, in my opinion. I just think it goes to ordinance and it takes a while to come out. I think there is some urgency to the council with some collaboration with the community, et cetera, to consider these two mergers. And that's why they're here. I'm in favor of advancing the public hearing. It doesn't mean that you have to approve it. There's certainly going to be opportunity for more dialogue as to how you select these groups and whether you add to them or not, as Mr. Jinks just suggested. Again, this, in my opinion, is just moving this forward so we can get it done to make these committees more effective. So I would like to see it go tonight, at least calling for the public hearing, and then we can figure the rest of it out. Ms. Nichols.
I would like to add to that. I think, having been through this committee process many times in my time here at the council, I agree with Mr. Jinks that perhaps we need to look at some of the structure of some of the committees going forward. But in this instance, I think to at least start the dialogue is the way to go now. And then even if we merge the committees now, we have time to expand or contract or change the structure of the committee going forward into January or February. But this gives us the people to run a committee immediately. And I do agree that perhaps at some point in time, we might want to look at the structure. But for now, I would support it this way.
Yes, Mr. Jinks.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm not looking to slow the process down by any means.
Right.
I mean, this is not something we need to spend a lot of time on, really. But I just, if the public hearing process is sufficient enough for us to have dialogue and make perhaps adjustments to the structure, let's go ahead and do that. I'm not looking to add work to the ordinance committee. I'm not looking to slow anything down by any means. If we're looking to merge these now, this is the time to consider changes to whatever the structure may be to these.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Mr. Slocum?
I just wanted to speak to the fact that for both the motions that'll be before us with relative to the committees, there will be backup documentation for how they would be structured, as there is in this. So that will be what we'd be potentially voting on that evening after the public hearing, and/or broadening and expanding upon to vote that night. That would be my thinking based on the timeframes that we're looking at. Just my thoughts on the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Veliver, Ms. Pavano? Yep, Mr. Veliver?
Thank you, Ms. I mean, I've looked at these, we've had discussions on this as well, and I'm comfortable with the, at least going forward with these, the public hearings so that we can get this process, moving. I mean, I don't see that there's gonna be any significant change coming out of the ordinance committee before it would come back and we'd have to have a public hearing anyway. So my theory would be, let's just get a public hearing. If people have comments and thoughts and changes, that's when those discussions would occur, and if we want to address them after that point, we can. But for now, I think it's important to get them to a public hearing so that we can get any feedback and potentially either move forward with how they've been addressed or make any changes with them, but at least try to get them done and structured so that, as Councilor Slocum has said, we need to kind of get by January, potentially, we need to have these structured so that both sides can fill up their committee requirements so we can go forward with a full committee, with one that's fully energized and one going forward with plans to make those committees as vibrant and as effective as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Ms. Pavano?
Yes, this has been an ongoing problem of the meetings not being able to be held because of the lack of quorum and so forth. So this is long overdue. I totally support us going forward with this at the public hearing. I don't think it's necessary to delay this any longer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Pavano. So thank you all. If there's no other further comment, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to 9F, which is discussion and possible call for public hearing regarding proposed amendments merging the Energy Commission and Environment Commission. And I will read this resolution. Be resolved, the Town Council approves resolution number 111621-7. Be resolved, Town Council shall hold a public hearing to consider amendments to the Code of Ordinance merging the Energy Commission and the Environment Commission. And be it further resolved, the town manager shall cause a notice of said public hearing to be posted and published according to law. And be it further resolved that the date, time, and place or postponements thereof shall be determined by the town manager with approval of the chairman of the council. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Walsh. So very much along the same lines, I know we don't have any supportive narrative on this one yet. The thought was that this fell into the same kind of category as the prior safety and prison advisory. I think that it makes sense to move this along, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for the council to evaluate whether changes need to be made and how so. Again, we're just calling for a public hearing. So with that, I'll ask any questions or comments from members of the council. Mr. Talbot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With this one, without the supporting material, I will support it because I understand that we're just sending it to the public hearing. But I would like to see the backup to this sooner rather than later, so that we can get some changes in prior to the public hearing. The first one I'm totally comfortable with. It makes sense. This one I'm not as comfortable with because being liaison to energy, I have a good working knowledge of what they're involved in, and certainly I see there's some potential, but I see energy and commission, or energy and environment, is two separate. But if we saw the backup and had the ability to look at expanding the commission and what the wording would be, I'm hoping that I could get comfortable with it prior to the public hearing, or at least have the ability to initiate some change. So I will support this going to the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. And that certainly was the idea, exactly as you just presented it. So thank you. Mr. Slocum.
If I may, because I do think it requires a little more clarification here. There's two pieces to the energy, to the Environment Commission and obviously the charge that environment has. One of the charges of environment is somewhat oversight over our public lands, some of the parks and stuff like that. That is a role that's envisioned to be taken up by Park and Rec. So that's sort of absent from this, but in the boilerplate that will be presented for us to look at, it will speak to those two separate roles and bifurcation actually, so that environment is actually speaking to, when it's talking about energy, it might be speaking about whether or not the town's interested in electric cars or something of that nature. It was seen, some of that came out of the forum. And then as a practical matter, the public property, so to speak, a lot of them are recreation and use. Public Works is handling their maintenance anyway. So we saw that charge moving over there, so to speak. So I think for clarity, when you see the boilerplate or the new assignment, so to speak, it will reflect those dual places that this group will be breaking up into.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to 9G, discussion and possible approval of bid waiver for the purchase of fire department vehicles. Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 111621-8, whereas the fire department is purchasing new Chevrolet fire department vehicles as approved in the fiscal year 21-22 capital budget, whereas the fire chief has represented that Richard Chevrolet has agreed to match the state contract price for the Chevrolet fire vehicles. And whereas the council finds it in the best interest of the town to purchase the vehicles from Richard Chevrolet, a local business, now therefore be it resolved that the town council pursuant to section 7-8 C11 of the town charter approves a waiver of bid for the purchase of said equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Barry.
Mr. Chairman, briefly, the fact that they're matching the state bid price means we are going out to bid. So that box is checked, and technically it's a waiver because we are offering the price to a local business. And I think anytime we can do business with a local business and the town makes out well pricing, it's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to, let's see, 9H, discussion and possible action regarding Bartland Park South Engineering Services. I don't believe there's action to be taken tonight. We do have a resolution, but I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to hopefully begin advancing what was approved through referendum, the Bartland Park improvements. I think we're all very happy that that got approved. I know I am. I think it's going to be a valuable asset to this community. It's certainly, as you've heard me talk about, we need to strategically invest in places here in this community. I believe this is one of those strategic investments. And I was hoping that we could start the process sooner than later. I think that would be great. So we had gone ahead and asked for Sean and John Gawlak to request from Weston and Sampson a fee structure for taking this project forward from where they left off all the way through bidding process and potentially construction management. I believe that there was some benefits to continuing forward with Weston and Sampson. I still believe that just because they did a lot of the preliminary work. So I think you've all recently received the proposal that was received by Weston and Sampson. I'm personally not in favor of advancing this at this point. I think it needs more conversation and discussion. I'm not suggesting that the fees are out of line at this point, but it is a total of about $750,000. And it basically includes the following items: site investigation, which includes survey, wetlands, subsurface investigation for $50,000, preliminary design, which is about $120,000, design development, which is $295,000, local permitting and site plan review, $55,000, final design and contract documents, $225,000, and then bid assistance, $5,000. The total of all of that is $750,000. A lot of money. It is, as I know, Sean, within the allocated amount of our preliminary budget for these services. Is that correct?
It is that's correct. There was about 10% assumed in the budgeting that we had reviewed during the capital budget for this item.
Correct. So we did have this in our preliminary budget. It's part of the $7.9 million that went out to referendum and was approved. But in light of the amount of the money that is presented here in front of us, I personally believe that it needs further investigation. I would recommend that we put this out to bid in light of the magnitude of the dollars, just to make sure that we're being protective of taxpayer money. I think it's important that we are very transparent with the public as to how we spend their money. And while there are times that we've made decisions not to go to bid, I don't think this is one, particularly in light of what I'm seeing here in numbers. So my recommendation is that let's have a dialogue tonight if you all have any questions on it. But my recommendation is that we advance this and get some bids basically for like-kind services and see where we stand. So with that, I'll open it up for questions from members of the council. Or actually, before we go there, Mr. Kimball, anything from you?
No, I mean, I think you summarized what we were going to review, which was really the cost structure. I will point to the last page, though, just that's what came in today as further clarification, kind of breaking down the fees by discipline, as they said, just to try to, this is a complicated project. There's a lot of steps, obviously, to take this to the finish line. And so, I think that page does a good job of just kind of outlining what they anticipated for what they factored into that number, 750,000, in terms of what's design versus local permitting and other things that they may be, shopping out in terms of traffic engineering, geotech, and whatnot. So just other than to point out that page, I didn't have anything specific to cover.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. Golak, anything? No? Thank you for your hard work on this. I know you were an integral part of getting this out to the community, design work. You and I, with Sean and a number of other people, sat many, many days with Weston and Sampson trying to come up with a design that would work for the community, and you played a major role in that, so thank you for that. Well, we appreciate the community support through the referendum because that's what's going to pay for it. But the good news is I think we've got a good team to advance this project, and it's important for this community. And I think we all want to make sure it starts off correctly. We want to make sure that this project goes, I don't want to use the wrong word, but swimmingly. Is that not a good word to use? I got to have a little levity. So we want to make sure the project goes off really well for the taxpayers. I see Mr. Nowotny in the back. You got a good laugh out of that one. Any event, I got to have a farewell laugh. Come on, folks. So I think it's important that we do some further vetting on this. And, let's open it up for questions or comments from the council at this point. Mr. Slocum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question, and this was on page 7 of the first document I saw, which was supplanted with a new one presented to the whole table tonight. And it was number 7 on the design task or phase, where that also totaled to 750,000. But it also had a construction phase services, future, whatever that means. The 350 to 400K, was that really, what is it? I guess I need to have an explanation on what that is.
So I think actually the page before that, page 6 at the bottom, there's task 7, which they anticipate as future proposed services. That outlines kind of what they're envisioning would take place over 18 months of active construction.
So in other words, this is their role as clerk of the works and other stuff. It just takes away any architectural fees associated with a bathroom or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly. I think this is the phase of the project when shovels are in the ground and earth's being moved around, and you're having someone do what you see there, attend pre-construction meetings, weekly construction meetings, taking notes, shop drawings, all that. So it is clerk of the work services and sort of expanded, I guess, additional engineering services as needed through that process. But certainly, I think that in this proposal they outline that as future. As you pointed out, it's not in the number, the proposed number, and so certainly that's something that the council could decide to.
Right,
to
but
bid
again,
out
it's
separately.
budgeted. It's budgeted for. It was part of that not contingency, but that inclusion in the 7.9. Okay, and here's the follow on. question that I have, and that'll be it from me. With
I just want to clarify what you said is budgeted for, is not budgeted for.
I wanted to know that in the 7.9, it is included in the budget, those construction services, those posts, that's part of that 350 to 400,000 is not an add-on to 7.9 where we get to subtract from something we do there.
Well, and Sean, before you, I don't, if you need to look it up, it was my understanding we had 10% in there for these soft costs.
Right.
And then there was a fairly large contingency number in there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this
so-
is more in that contingency number.
Yeah, so I would imagine that these services that you're referring to that are future services may not be in that 10% number, but are in the overall budget. Obviously, I think our goal here is to beat the $7.9 million.
Right,
And
right.
I think that'll happen. I hope.
Right. Yeah, well, I would hope so too. I just wanted the clarity on that. And then the other piece of this is where Weston and Sampson did so much of the design work and the public saw it, we saw it, we all broke it down into pieces we thought we could put forth at referendum. Given the fact that this could go to, out to bid, any bidders would be bound, so to speak, within the limits of what we basically sold the public. In other words, this plan, this schematic we're looking at, Great Lawn, stormwater storage, and all those specific areas, that would all be part of what goes out to bid, correct? Okay. And then the final piece of this, it's probably fairly typical that someone proposes and comes up with a proposal of this nature, that they could be part of the project anyway, correct? I mean, we don't, in other words, are we obligated to go out to bid? Is there any concerns we should have other than those so well expressed by the chairman? That we're looking out for the public's money and the best buck possible. There's no reason that we actually have to go out to bid. If we're happy and content somehow with a little bit more information or whatever, that we think this number is actually okay, we could go with this
You would
proposal.
need a bid waiver.
A bid waiver, right,
Right.
obviously.
You would have to approve.
Right, which the council would have to approve. So, which is a big number. But I guess we haven't built anything in a while. And I just don't know if we have recent precedent for this. If, for example, when we put the new addition to the high school, which is, I think, the most recent thing done at a public school here, was there an architect that, planned that proposal, helped guide through the proposal, and then they didn't put it out to bid for an architect? I mean, did it work out that they automatically put it out for bid, and even if the architect that got it, had to bid?
For school construction projects that are receiving a state grant, there's a very specific procurement process, RFQ, RFP, short list of not more than 4. And if you don't follow it, you don't get reimbursed. But for a straight town-funded project, it's the charter and ordinances that require you to bid or do a bid with.
But perhaps best practices is to put this out to bid when you get right down to it.
I certainly think so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing against it. I
Yeah.
just want to know, I want some guidance.
Yeah, I certainly would recommend doing an RFP. There's a statement at the end of the first paragraph of the November 12th correspondence. The referendum budget included 10% design, engineering, and local permitting. So that seems to be the basis of the fee, that there was 10% included in the referendum. That's not the right way to submit a proposal, okay? Because this is the nature of this project, the scope of this project. It's all in the dirt. So the likelihood of having some type of differing site condition or subsurface condition is greater than if you were building a building, right? So the amount of the contingency, if I was, and I haven't seen the breakdown of the referendum budget, but if I was doing a 10% design allocation, I would include a design contingency. I mean, you're always going to have in a properly planned project, you're always going to have 3 contingencies: a design contingency, a construction contingency, and an owner's contingency, right? The owner's contingency is used for programmatical changes. The construction contingency is used for certain mistakes and problems with subs and whatnot. And design contingency is used to deal with scope creep that happens as you move from DD to CD. So that 10% ought to include some contingency. If you use that whole 10% by saying, okay, there's 10% in the referendum for us, our fee's 10%, then there's no design contingency in the 10%, and the design contingency has to come out of the owner's contingency. So, just from a best practice perspective, I think you should do an RFP.
And I'm sorry, guys, I'll get to you in a quick second. And certainly we want to make sure that if we do go out to bid, which I recommend we do, that we make sure the bid allows us to select who we choose, that it's not going to be just a low bid. It's going to be someone who we think is best for the project. So I think we want to be very careful as to how we develop this RFP or bid or whatever we do.
Yeah, an RFP, it primarily is qualification based. So you could there's two ways you could write the RFP. One would be to have some type of QBS, quantitative based selection process, which is what the state uses, where you have categories of qualifications and weighted criteria. The other way, which is what I would do for a project like this, is just tell them what you want and then reserve for yourself the right to award on other than the basis of price, check references. And I do a lot of fields in a lot of towns. There's certainly at least a half a dozen very qualified firms, including Weston and Sampson in Connecticut, that will compete for this work. And you will get a better price for this type of work, especially given, the schedule is not, quite frankly, overly ambitious. The design schedule and the construction schedule are not overly aggressive. So I think it's a nice project for any A&E firm, and you'll get some nice competition for it.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Bauer, then
Okay.
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly think with the dollar amounts that are involved here, we do need to go out to bid. We need to get proposals. We need to see what's out there. I do think it has to adhere to the general design. And I do think Weston and Sampson was great to work with. I had 3 or 4 meetings with them and the town manager and the parks director when we were doing the capital budget to put this together, because it was supposed to be 3 or 4 different pieces. And we decided this was the right piece to help every age within the community. And they were very helpful with that. But the dollars involved here, it's got to go to proposals, and we've got to see what else is out there to get. But it's got to adhere to this general scheme of what we wanted. There was contingency, but I don't know if there were the 3 different contingencies our town attorney talked about. But I know we had the contingency in there at the 20%, which I think was a construction contingency. And we'll have to see what happens with the others as they go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. And I agree as well it should go out to an RFP, but looking at, the schedule, and I know Attorney D'Onofrio said it's not an aggressive schedule, but it looks like they're starting their preliminary design November 2021, which is now. It's just a February 2021. I assume that's a typo. That should be 2022. But how far off will that push this schedule? And, will we be looking at, instead of a completed date of November 2024, are we looking into 2025? I don't know how long it would take to get an RFP in and but I still think it's important that we do that. But I just want to make sure the public has an understanding of the schedule as do we.
I think it's important to avoid that third winter. So I agree with you that, the schedule, has them starting in November and has a relatively short time frame for the schematic design phase, but there's plenty of time in the design development phase and in the construction documents phase. Of course, a lot of it has to do with the permitting process and how quickly that happens. Hopefully things are a little bit more streamlined this time next year. But I think there's, in terms of your question about how long, we can get an RFP out this month and have the whole thing awarded this year. So, maybe it delays
And that's what
the
I would hope we
process a
could
month.
do. Yeah, that's what I hope we could do.
Sure.
Okay.
No worries.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Other questions or comments from members of the council? So towards that end, I obviously, I think it's important that the community recognize that we're advancing this project as quickly as we can, but we're going to do it in a thoughtful and appropriate manner to make sure we're doing it correctly. I'm not overly worried about the timeframes that they're in. I think a lot of those timeframes will change as you move forward. I think you could probably speed it up if you do it correctly, but I would recommend, and I don't know, Sean, you and I talked about it. I don't know if we need a formal vote to advance an RFP to get, I think we can just instruct that you guys get this ready for bid through an RFP process and get that process started, correct?
Yeah, unless Jeff feels otherwise, I think that's our standard process, absent a bid waiver requested through you. So I see that.
So
direction is fine.
Are there any council members that feel we should not be advancing this to an RFP or bid process at this point? Okay. Jim, you're good? Dave and Sandy? Yeah, everybody's good here. So it sounds to me like, we're interested in moving this forward, folks. We'd like to obviously get some other bids so that we can hopefully save some money and move forward with either Weston and Sampson or another very qualified firm and get this process started sooner than later. So unless you need something more from us, I think you've got your marching orders. Okay? Nothing more? The next item I'm going to be recusing myself from, so I'm going to be stepping out of the room while you guys deal with this issue. I'll turn it over to Vice Chairman Mr. Slocum. And whenever you'll allow me to come back to the meeting, I'll come back. You may lock the door, no problem.
Yeah, we made our comments earlier, so.
Preview of coming attractions.
Yeah.
You'll be back.
Come up through the window.
And have Miss Milton note for the record that Mr. Orris has closed the door. Okay. I'll advance the motion, guys, and gals. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 111621-10. Whereas the town is the owner of an 18-inch ductile iron pipe sleeve installed under I-691 near Route 10 in or about on or about 1984 as depicted in an as-built drawing provided by the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation to Metcalf and Eddy, Inc. under the cover of September 24, 1985 pipe sleeve. Whereas the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority, RWA, is performing a project to extend its transmission water main to the north side of I-691 along Route 10 and desires the use of the pipe sleeve to extend its water main. Whereas the town is not using the pipe sleeve and the town's Water Pollution Control Authority voted on July 29, 2021 to authorize the town to convey ownership of the pipe sleeve to RWA. And whereas the town and the RWA have agreed that the town, in exchange for payment by the RWA to the town in the sum of $18,000, will convey ownership of the pipe sleeve to the RWA in an as-is, where-is basis, without any representations or warranties by the town as a condition, adequacy, or fitness of the pipe sleeve for any purpose. Therefore, be it resolved that the town manager is authorized to execute such documents as are necessary to convey the ownership of the pipe sleeve to the RWA in exchange for payment to the town of the sum of $18,000 on an as-is, where-is basis with no representation as to the condition, adequacy, or fitness of the pipe sleeve for any purpose. Thank you. Well, we managed to say everything twice in there, so somebody should have this right, I would think. This pipe sleeve is on the east side of the highway, Route 10. It is something that got located, and it's very fortuitous that it's been found. And there's a reward out for whoever found it. And the water company is extremely happy to be able to use it because they don't have to suspend water underneath the highway, basically suspended from a bridge, which they would have done, but they would have had to bring out Bunsen burners every winter. And this eliminates that need. That's a joke on the Bunsen burners, by the way, for those of you who don't know what a Bunsen burner is. Call your grandmother. Beyond that, that's the short explanation. And I'm happy to support this great sum of money for a pipe that's been buried for a long, long time. Anything about pipes you find more interesting? Okay, we can call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimous of all those present. So now we have to go get Rob because this meeting can't end without him. Suppose it can continue without him. So why don't we just move into the town manager report and communications?
All right, well, I was comments about Rob, so I'll end with him. How about that?
That's fine.
But if you'll have in your packet, I'll try to be brief. We'll start with just a brief review of recent COVID numbers. The rate of new COVID cases in Cheshire has remained below 2% on average, although it has been ticking up in the last week and few days. And as of Friday, November 12th, our local positivity rate over the last 7 reporting days is 1.4%. And the rolling 21-day average of this metric, which is that yellow line you see in our familiar graph, is up to 1.6%. So again, still in certainly good shape compared, as you can tell, to last winter, but obviously bears watching closely. We have moved from the yellow to orange, although it looks yellow in the copy before you here. The orange alert level from the state DPH, based on average daily cases of 100,000 population. Cheshire is currently reported at 10.6 cases per 100,000. And again, I would not be surprised if that ticks up just a little bit more in the next week or two. To date, 77.49% of Cheshire residents of all ages have received at least one vaccination dose. Compared to the last month report, that's an increase of 0.65%, where we were last month, again, at 76.84%. Chespercott has been recently hosting a number of local vaccine clinics, including primary doses, booster shots, and now pediatric doses, age 5 to 11. I can speak from personal experience this past weekend that they've been doing a great job, especially with that age bracket. See below for some additional clinics that are held up at 1750 Huckins Road. There's ones tomorrow, November 17th, as well as December 1st and December 15th. Moving on, I want to acknowledge we added, of course, to the events of this past weekend. Cheshire experienced a very fast-moving and intense storm that moved in a northeasterly direction through the center of town on 3:30 p.m. on Saturday, creating significant damage along a relatively narrow path. Sunday afternoon, Chief Kasner and I led an official from the National Weather Service on a tour of the damage, beginning in the Higgins Road, Mountain Road area, and ending near Country Club Road. The damage he evaluated, particularly in the area of Willow, Warren, and George Streets, again, right in the center of town, confirmed we experienced an EF0 tornado with estimated wind speeds of 75 miles per hour. Eversource reported peak power outages affecting 1,200 customers in town on Saturday evening. The last remaining outages were resolved by about noon on Sunday, and also additional cable and internet outages remained until around 9:30 p.m. That evening. In terms of damage to town property, the Cheshire High School Stadium scoreboard was taken down, a tree fell through a fence at Highland School, and both the main fire station and South End Firehouse sustained some roof damage. The town has opened the old transfer station at 1304 Waterbury Road for storm debris drop-off. This week of November 15th, it's open again today through Friday, 7:30 to 3 p.m., but also Saturday, 7:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And also the week of November 22nd, again, Thanksgiving week, Monday through Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. And also Saturday, 7:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Just a reminder, as we've done in the past, you must be a Cheshire resident, so no landscapers, tree services, or other commercial companies, please, and brush and leaves only, and no building materials or other debris. And I want to, again, just publicly thank all of our public works, police, dispatch, fire, and building department responders for their professionalism and their dedication to our community during the storm event. Once again, they really rise to the occasion, but particularly after a storm event where we had really little to no warning that it was going to be as severe locally as it ended up being. I will direct you to the bulky waste collection summary report from Director Nowotny. I know is still in the back of the room here if you have any specific questions. But attached to this report, kind of page, I guess that's 3 or 4 here, just to briefly go through, as we had been kind of monitoring throughout, the amount of material was less. It was about 44% less than our collection 2 years ago. That does result in a savings of what we estimated of about $54,000. So that's, again, good news there. The quantity of material, as I said, was 44% less. Most weeks, the collection concluded by Thursday afternoon. So again, the total cost included the $155,000 fee for the collection, but $84,000 for the actual disposal of the material by tonnage. Again, I won't go through all of the observations there, but again, I think generally there was a little more compliance than we had with some of the non-acceptable items than we had maybe 2 years ago. You'll notice on page, I guess 3, you'll see a nice image of the unacceptable bulky waste tag that our own George Nowotny was seen putting on various piles and ineligible material. And I think that did contribute to some of the compliance and the avoidance of additional charges. But
Thanks, Sean. I put a TV out and it got left. I didn't realize I couldn't.
It was probably George.
Thanks,
I'm
George.
assuming it was George's fault. Yep.
I dragged it all the way out and I had to drag it all the way back in.
So again, I'm sure there may be some questions, and George will certainly answer them as we, if there are any specific to the bulky waste report, either now or at a future meeting. And just to go back to my report real quick, we are in the middle of the townwide leaf collection. Again, that runs from November 8th to December 17th. Reminder, leaves must be placed curbside in biodegradable bags before 7 a.m. on Mondays for pickup by the Public Works Department. Again, we covered earlier the budget referendum results. Both were successful. You'll see the vote totals there for the road improvement program and also Bartland South Chapman property, as we just discussed. Up next, we have an economic development update, and I thank Andrew Martelli for putting this together for me. The first item is the zone text amendment change for the interchange zone. This was supported in the 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development, allowing for storage, warehouse, and distribution centers with trucking facilities incidental to the main use in the interchange zone. This was an amendment supported by the Economic Development Commission at their October 12th meeting and approved by Planning and Zoning after the closing of their public hearing on October 25th. This amendment will facilitate the development of parcels for distribution currently reserved for technology, office park, and conference centers as envisioned the adoption of the regulations in 1985. Update on ball and sockets remediation grant and project. The grant was submitted to DECD, as the council is aware, on October 21st in the amount of $925,000 for further remediation to Building 1. A $1.5 million Urban Act funding for completion of Phase 1, Building 2, which is the future home of Sweet Claude's, is underway with general contractor identified for fit-out work to begin in the next few months, with opening planned for the spring of 2022. Parking areas, subsurface drainage, and utility work are ongoing with paving of the front parking lot in early 2022. And actually, I think earlier today, the New Haven Business Journal was here doing a piece on Cheshire's economic development with a focus on ball and socket as a major catalyst for town center creation. The credit enhancement agreement that the council approved previously for Stonebridge Crossing was fully executed by all parties on October 27th. The RWA, as we just said, is currently installing water lines north along Route 10. 2 properties along Route 10 that are key to the development were recently acquired by the developer, and inquiries for town zoning requirements are being received by P&Z. Other business activity updates: Counterweight Brewing Company is moving forward with signage recently approved by the town and opening in January of 2022. And other October business activity, La Cucina prepared meals and catering at 1089 South Main Street opened on October 1st. Blossom Nutrition had a ribbon cutting on October 9th. A&E Services Group, LLC, is leasing space at 609 West Main Street, which is the former Webster Bank. Chase Bank construction demolition began October 4th. Beyond Nutrition ribbon cutting was held October 28th. Remax Realty, which is the former Cheshire Herald building, signed a lease for that building. And Marbridge has submitted their building permit for Phase 2, 25,000 square foot addition. Just two more quick updates. Friends of the Cheshire Library book sale is back this year, and you'll see the dates below. That starts tomorrow for the preview night for the Friends members, and then for the full public Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's always a great event. And also the ever popular Arts Place Market for 2021 will be November 20th and 21st, which is a very popular holiday art market, which is again returning this year at the Arts Place building, November 20th and 21st, including over 30 artists with their paintings, jewelry, scarves, decorative arts, pottery, fiber arts, lamps, and more. So again, that concludes the town manager's report. I did want to say at the outset and get my moment also to join in the appreciation, Chairman Orris, for everything you've done for the town on behalf of the leadership team, the management team, and all of our town employees. I want to express our great appreciation. I think we say it from time to time, but I don't think people appreciate just how much time all of you put in, but particularly the chairman puts in. I think sometimes he deflects some of it, but you mentioned just earlier about Bartland South. We spent hours and hours and hours in some of those meetings in 207 and out at the Park and Rec Youth Center, moving pieces of the puzzle around on that Bartland Park map. And again, I just think it's worth noting for everybody just how much time gets put in by you and the rest of the council. And as you often point out, not for a huge salary being up there, I can tell you that. So I just want to say that. And also, we've been through some significant events over the last 3.5 years. My first week started with the tornado, if you all remember. And so Rob was supportive from day one with that. Of course, we're kind of ending with the tornado. So we'll start and we'll end with the tornado. That's great. We've had a major tropical storm and a global pandemic in the meantime. So it's hard enough to be a chair of a council, but to do it in such trying times is incredibly admirable. And my hat is off to you. And we thank you for everything you've done. So with that, I will end my lengthy town manager report.
Thank you, Sean. And it's you and your professional staff make our job a whole lot easier. So kudos back to you and your senior management and all your staff. You guys do an incredible job. You work really hard and you make the council's job much easier. So thank you for that. Questions or comments, Mr. Talbot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sean, what did we budget for bulky waste?
It should be right. Oops. It should be
so
325.
Okay. So there was some real significant savings then from
the appropriation.
Yep.
I think that's correct.
And the last is just a quick comment. And Andrew, thank you for including the economic development as part of the town manager's report. We look forward to that on a regular basis. It really keeps us focused on that, and it's so critical with the things we got coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Other questions, comments, Mr. Slocum?
Just a question regarding the organization, not the organizational, but the swearing in ceremony that's scheduled for December 6th at 5:30. All town departments have been advised, or all elected officials who have to get sworn in have been advised and informed of that. I mean, that's not just the council getting voted in. I thought it was
It's everybody, and the town committees generally send out the invitations and notify, but we'll follow up.
well, only because it's just not that far off and there's Thanksgiving and everything. I just wanted to make sure there was, because sometimes it's been on a Sunday. We all agreed this is better, but I just thought I'd get that straightened out.
Thanks, Mr. Slocum. Any other questions or comments on the town manager's report? Mr. Walsh?
Well, although this wasn't part of the town manager report, I'm going to make it a little self-serving here. Cheshire's Lights of Hope, which was postponed because of a tornado this past weekend, will be happening this weekend. A good part of the money is coming back into this town. So I just wanted to let people know that the weather forecast looks good. This was the first time in 15 years we had to postpone for good cause. We didn't want a bunch of flying luminaries in a tornado. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we're planning on doing it this Saturday, and hopefully everybody can take part in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Other questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Velver. Go ahead.
Question probably for George. Back a couple weeks ago, we had the electronics recycling event. And there had been some discussion about whether there was going to be a potential additional supplemental recycling event. And I wasn't sure if that was still in the discussion or if it was determined you don't need it. I just wanted to find out, 'cause I know I had a couple of people ask me about it. And I just wanted to find out if that's something that's still potentially in the works.
Sure, thanks for the question. Right now, we don't have anything scheduled. With the holidays coming up and things, it's getting a little crazy to try to schedule some of that. So we have advised folks that they can go to AJ Waste and bring up to 7 electronics pieces of electronics equipment to them any Saturday of the week or any Saturday of the month or year, and take advantage of that part of it. But we'll schedule another one for sure, probably in March of 22. We're going to try to get out of the spring activity window where there's a lot of things going on and people moving around for sports and other things.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Veliver. Other questions or comments on the town manager report? I just had a quick question, and maybe Andrew Martelli can help answer this. You might know. And first off, Andrew, thank you for all your hard work. I know you hit the ground running, and I hear great things are coming, and I really appreciate and applaud your hard work already. I think you're making a difference. So thank you for that. But my question is, I noticed Trinity Health, at least a portion of them, moved out of the North End building across from the car wash, it looked like, and they relocated down somewhere down south. And I'm not 100% sure. Are you aware of that?
I don't know that, but what I do know is that St. Mary's is actually moving into that building. If you're talking about the brick building, right?
Yeah, well, St. Mary's is Trinity Health. Trinity
So
Health owns
they're
St.
actually having
Mary's
a ribbon
Hospital.
cutting there on Thursday of this week at that building across from the car wash.
Because I noticed there was a sign covered up there. See, they were in both sides of that first floor across from the car wash before. Right. And now I went by and I saw they had the sign covered. So I thought maybe they moved, but that's not the case.
Yeah, as
They're
far
just
as I know,
changing the
they're
sign?
actually, they have a luncheon sponsored by the chamber there on Thursday at noon.
Okay, good.
So I'll be there and I'll definitely find out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I don't mean to confuse everybody, but I knew they were on both sides of that main floor. When you went in, they had the emergency service on one side and I think primary care or internal medicine on the other. And then I went by today and I noticed that one side of the sign was covered. So I had assumed they had relocated because I had seen that there was a grand opening for them somewhere, which I thought was another building, but I was probably mistaken. So
It's
thank
in
you.
that building, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm glad they're staying there. So good. Thank you. I guess that's all we have for town manager report communications. We're going to move on to reports of committees of the council. Chairman's report on my left, Mr. Walsh.
No report.
Ms. Nichols, Mr. Slocum,
No report.
Mr. Bowery,
No, sir.
Mr. Veliver.
Well, there we go. Ordinance will be meeting, but unfortunately probably not before Thanksgiving, to pick up some of its items, to start working on some of those again, so.
Okay, great. I do have a referral of the town engineer position to the personnel committee. I think you're going to be sending that for further review and possible kind of reclassification. Is that correct, Sean? That's the
That's
reason for
correct.
my referral?
That's correct. Yeah, we're looking into some options there that we'll be presenting first to personnel, but we've had some trouble hiring the assistant town engineer position that we budgeted for in the budget. And I think we have some ideas there as to how we may further strategize bringing in that professional engineering services. So thank you.
Move on to miscellaneous and appointments liaison reports. My left, Mr. Walsh.
No report.
Ms. Nichols?
No, Sean? Sean stole the thunder, but remember, the book sale for the library is this weekend, starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, for all of you who are not friends of the public library. And the arts place is having their market. So remember both of those. And I just would like to comment again, Andrew, you're getting a lot of kudos tonight, but I've been present at a couple of presentations that he's made lately to groups. And one was to the library board the other night. And his enthusiasm and energy is really catchy, and people are excited to hear about the things that are going on. Keep it up. It's really great. People are interested in what's going on. You're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Slocum.
No report.
Mr. Barry. Mr. Talbot. Mr. Jenks.
Yeah, I do want to just mention, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, first of all, but just wanted to mention the Public Safety Commission did have an online survey, and we, the commission had, I think, 215, 220 or so responses to that survey. I think it's been submitted to the town manager's office at this point, but the commission's going to put together a presentation based on the findings. There's a lot of good comments, a lot of feedback we got from the public. There's several areas of sort of concern that are kind of common across a lot of the community, but we'll be, or the commission will be submitting a report to the council at some point so everyone can see what's in there, but it's a lot of good feedback we got.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jenks. Mr. Valiber.
No report.
Ms. Pavano.
No report.
Thank you. We'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. Ms. Nichols, anything? Mr. Talbot?
I do.
Great. Go ahead, sir.
I would like to bring forward the nomination or the renomination of Barbara Ecke to Chesprocott Health District. The term of office is 11/16/21 to 1/31/24, and Ms. Ecke is a Democrat.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Talbot, anything more to add? No? Any questions or comments on this? No? Okay, with that, call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you to Mrs. Ecke for serving. I know she's been there for a lot of years, and we appreciate the fact that she's willing to continue to do it. I know Mrs. Ecke, and I know she loves to give back, so thank you for her service. I also have an appointment tonight, which I'm going to make as chairman, which I believe I'm able to do. It's a vacancy that's been vacant for more than 60 days. I will be making the appointment of, and I'm very happy to be doing this because I think this individual is going to be a good addition to this board, but it's Sean Kimball to the Chesprocott Health District Board of Directors. Effective immediately. I don't know the term that he's replacing, but I believe he's replacing Mr. Sima. Is that correct? Okay, so he'll be filling the term of Mr. Sima through September 2023. I would just ask that we confirm that Mr. Kimball is a Cheshire resident. No, I think
That is correct.
that is correct. Okay. So I'm very happy to make that appointment. And Sean and I talked about this, and I had actually had an interest in potentially serving in that role at one point in time once I had left the council. And the more we thought about it, and Sean and I had a conversation, and this came up, and I really think he's the right person to fill that role. I think he obviously brings a apolitical position to that board. Given everything we've gone through with the pandemic and everything else, I think we need to have more of a connection between the town council and the town and what's going on at Chesprocott. I think Maura does a great job, but having a very effective board of directors will only help her continue to be effective. So I think this is a great idea. I'm very happy that I can make that appointment. I know it's going to be a good spot to have you at, Sean. So thank you for volunteering. You don't get any more pay for taking on that responsibility. But I'm very, very happy to make that appointment. I'm very happy that it's probably one of the last things I'm going to do as a council member. So that's great. And with that, we'll turn to a town attorney report and communications. Mr. D'Onofrio? Thank you, sir. Council communications, letters to the council. Any members? I have none either. Is there anything else that any of us need to? There was no executive session as I'm aware of. Is that correct, Mr. Slocum? Sean, nothing to talk in executive session? There was potentially of which I was going to recuse myself, but it's my understanding there is none. So if there's nothing else before this council, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Second? Anybody? Mr. Slocum, please. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all.